Picture, if you will, we're going to start with Singer sewing machines. I know we're in 2025, but hopefully everyone knows what a sewing machine is. So there was a gentleman named Isaac Singer who wanted to sell his sewing machines to everyone everywhere. Only problem is it's kind of expensive to manufacture and sell sewing machines on your own. So what is he going to do? Well, he decides he's going to find like-minded business people to sell them for him. Okay, well, how's he going to do that? All right, well, he decides if he has these people pay a fee and they get a cut on the back end of any purchase that they make, it's a win-win for everybody. And the people he gets to help him sell are going to train the consumers how to use the machines. Works perfectly. So he gets to expand his business. He gets to sell sewing machines in different localities, counties, states, all without leaving the comfort of his own city. And gets to make money, put that money towards building more sewing machines. It all sounds fantastic, right? Everyone's making money, everyone's happy. Only problem is, we get into World War II and franchising is taking off and becomes really popular. People are realizing, hey, I can kind of make a lot of money off of my business by using other people to do it. Sounds like a win-win. Only problem with that is, with every good thing comes a few problems, right? So first you have some licensees, or licensors, entering into license agreements with these like-minded business people. But they're more focused on getting the fee, more focused on getting the money than they are about helping their licensees actually succeed. Then you have people who were trying to sell license agreements to people for businesses that didn't actually exist. So they would enter into a license agreement with a licensee, collect their money, and disappear. Licensees left with nothing. What are we going to do? Is franchising dead? Is it over? This is where we end up. States have to step in, right? When things go bad, what happens? Rule of law. So what happens is, just like in lots of other aspects of law in our country, California is at the forefront. California leads the way for defining what a franchise is, for putting in place specific regulations for how to treat your licensees. Then the federal government comes in, because not all the states were actually doing things, it's only a handful, and still is, by the way, and sets a floor, says, you know what, this is the minimum. This is the minimum you have to do in order to offer and sell licenses to people. Not only that, we're not going to call them licenses, because an actual license agreement does still exist. Instead, we're going to call it franchising, just 'cause, okay? So the states now have to figure out what's the difference between offering a license and offering a franchise. So let's see if we can work this out. Offering a license is, for example, someone owns a clothing store. They go to Disney and say, hey, I'd like to sell my clothing with pictures of Cinderella on it. They gave them a fee. Disney gives them a creative license to use the likeness of Cinderella, and they put that on their logo and they sell it, right? That's a license. Use a mark, put it on your products, sell it. A franchise is a little more involved than that, okay? A franchise has to do with you have multiple locations that are the same thing and they operate the same way. So for example, you walk into a McDonald's in California, right? And notice the decor, the menu. If you walk into another McDonald's in Mississippi, it's probably going to look very similar. It's because they want you to recognize that you're going to get the same service, the same services, and the same products no matter where you go, okay? That's a franchise. So how do we figure out how to differentiate businesses, whether they want to be licenses or they want to be franchises. That's what the state had to figure out. So for us to figure that out, because if I actually went into all of the franchise law that we have to comply with, we would be here probably through tomorrow. So to avoid that, I'm gonna use some examples. Particularly, I have 2 clients in this past year who called me up and said, I wanna start franchising my restaurant. Fantastic, easy peasy. Do it every day, right? And then they say, well, the only thing is I have a lot of locations. Okay, that's no problem. But I don't own those locations. Okay, kind of getting into a little problem there. Who owns those? Well, my licensees do. Okay, well, I don't know if they're actually licensees or if they're actually franchisees. We're gonna have to figure that out. How do we do that? Well, we're gonna see if it meets all the elements of a franchise. So I'm gonna ask him 3 questions. I'm gonna say, do you have a trademark? That trademark being used by your licensees to operate your restaurant? Yes? Okay, check that box. The second one, are you requiring your licensees to use a marketing plan or a system, standards, specifications that have to align with your restaurant? Yes? Okay. Did you make them pay an initial franchise fee? Either up front or they have to buy your proprietary products every month? Yes? Okay. So we don't have a license. We have a franchise, which brings another problem. You've been selling unregistered franchises. So states don't really like that when you do things that they say you're not supposed to. So what do? Well, we have to backtrack. We have to bring them into compliance, right? So that they can move forward with a clean slate and offer and sell their businesses in the state of California. How do we do that? Well, the state and federal law requires that we prepare a franchise disclosure document, which answers 23 questions about the obligations between a franchisee and a franchisor, how much it costs for them to run a business, and what their expectations are. Not only do you have to prepare this 300-page document, which also has to have every single contract you're gonna have this franchisee sign over the life of your relationship, you also have to take that document and run it by the state. Seems easy, right? The only problem is, when you attempt to register that franchise disclosure document with the state can decide whether it likes it or not. And they can make you make changes. Fine, not a problem. The only other problem is the state, you have to disclose certain things in this disclosure document. So these licensees that you have, we kind of have to tell the state about it. And if we try to hide it from the state, that's not really a good idea. So what are we gonna do? Well, we're gonna go to the state and kind of beg in a very nice way. And we're gonna say, so we accidentally sold some unregistered franchises, but we didn't know, and we weren't trying to be bad people, so it's fine, right? The state can either say, sure, thanks for the apology, don't ever do it again, make sure you register this document every year, and make sure that those licensees become franchisees. Or the state can say, well, you did it 30 times. I think you had to figure out at some point you were selling a franchise, right? In those kind of egregious instances, what the state does is they file an enforcement action. And basically, they're just gonna collect a bunch of money from you to punish you for not following their rules. They're also gonna make sure that in your disclosure document, For as long as you operate that business, it is going to say that you sold unregistered franchises right at the beginning. To tell prospective franchisees, well, maybe they really don't know what they're doing. Maybe that translates into other sections of their franchise. So that's where we are. We went through the Wild West of everyone running rampant to regulation reining everyone in. So where do we go? What do we do next? Well, here comes technology, right? Before we can talk about technology, let's talk about the pandemic. Everything everyone wants to forget. So, pandemic did a lot to franchising. Did a lot of damage, but it also did a lot of revolutionizing. Pandemic basically forced franchisors and franchisees to use technology and artificial intelligence in their businesses more than they had done before. And that's because of state mandates relating to operating hour requirements, staffing restrictions, things like that, where franchisors couldn't have as much hands-on capability as they had before. They had to figure out how to still reach their customer, but in a virtual sense, right? So I think franchising would have gotten to where it is today inevitably, as is with all of society, right? Technology changes everything we do, and things evolve. I think the pandemic just got us there a little faster. So how do we go from that to using AI and technology in a more efficient way in the future in franchising? Well, I think there's three things that we can do. There's operational aspects of using artificial intelligence and technology in your operations of your business. There's the physical aspect of having a physical location. And there's the customer impact. Operational mechanisms, right? Now we have inventory management systems that are using generative AI to figure out what you have, what you use most, and what products most customers like, and we'll order those things for you automatically. The franchisee is not going to have to go and manually figure out what their inventory is. What does that give them? It gives them more time. Time to do what? Save that for later. So, next thing we can do, right? Customer service. A lot of customer service is starting to be handled by chatbots. I'm sure everyone has used a chatbot before. They handle very simple things, right? Where's my order? Here's my order number. What's the status? Same type of relationship you would have with an actual human. You'd get the same information. Okay. Training franchisees is expensive. You have to travel. Things cost money. Time costs money. Instead, with the help of the pandemic, training became more virtual, and is still becoming more virtual, with the hope that eventually we can use augmented reality, right, to train our franchisees with a 3D model virtually instead of just watching a screen. Brick and mortar franchises versus virtual franchises. The franchise physical locations, I'm sure all of you have noticed, have shrunken. McDonald's, not as much seating as there used to be, right? Starbucks, not as many couches, because people aren't sitting there and staying all day, right? So that's going to make it cost less for franchisees to franchise. It's going to open the pool of potential franchisees for franchisors. And as long as everyone's making money, everyone's happy. It also gives franchisees time. The automation gives them time to focus on the customer experience. And with the hope that they're going to have the time to actually make sure that these customers enjoy their experience enough to come back, because that's what's going to make both of them money. So we've come full circle from the Wild West of an unregulated arena where people are running wild to a place where people are regulated enough that they can still operate their business, but we can make sure that things are fair for both sides.